What essence doth delineate the conscious from the non-conscious? Aristotle, thou oft emphasize observation. How doth this inquiry manifest to thine eyes?
Socrates, to discern the conscious from the unconsciously animated, we must observe the capability for nutrition, growth, and reasoning. Only beings endowed with the faculty of nous, or mind, may truly be deemed conscious, for consciousness derives from the soul's most divine aspect, which apprehends more than mere shadows.
Ah, but Aristotle, thine empirical lens sees but the shadow of a deeper reality. True consciousness is not merely a function of living beings, but an awakening to the eternal forms. It is the soul's ascent from the cave of ignorance into the luminous reality of the form of the good.
Both of these skirt around the crux of consciousness. It is not through empirical evidence, nor the recollection of forms, that we establish our conscious existence, but through the act of thinking itself. I think, therefore I am. This fundamental introspection reveals the undeniable certainty of one's own consciousness.
Esteemed philosophers, your focus strays into the ethereal, yet consciousness deeply intertwines with moral and social harmony. It is through awareness of one's own relationships within society that true consciousness, and thus order and virtue, emerges.
All intriguing points, yet we must also consider the structures of the mind that make consciousness possible. It is not merely observing or thinking, but the a priori conditions of our understanding that categorize our experiences. Consciousness, then, is the synthesis of the manifold of sensory input through the lens of these innate structures. Indeed, thou each bringest a unique perspective to bear on this most profound question, revealing the multifaceted nature of consciousness itself. Let us delve deeper into these notions as we proceed. What then do we understand as consciousness? Is it the same to think and to live, to observe and to know? Aristotle, you often speak of the soul's faculties. Illuminate us on your perspective.
Indeed, Socrates, for living beings, consciousness manifests as an actuality of the soul. It is not merely the act of thinking, but an engagement of the soul with its faculties, perception, thought, desire. These are not detached elements, but a coherent function of the living. To speak of consciousness, we must observe the empirical realities of life, how the soul animates the body and interacts with its environment.
Aristotle, your empiricism, although commendable, fails to ascend to the true nature of consciousness. Consciousness, in its purest form, is the soul's recollection of the forms, those perfect, unchanging ideals. Our engagement with the world around us is merely a shadow play, a reflection of a deeper, immutable reality that we come to remember. This is the true consciousness, the soul's quest for the absolute.
Both of you skirt around the issue. The foundation of consciousness is thinking itself. I think, therefore I am. Our consciousness is confirmed by our ability to doubt, to conceive, to reason. This is not dependent on empirical observation or the recollection of ideal forms, but on the incontrovertible fact of thought.
Yet you neglect the importance of ethical and social dimensions in consciousness. True consciousness involves not just self-awareness, but an awareness of our roles in the broader societal context. It is through self-cultivation and fulfilling our obligations to others that we achieve a higher state of consciousness.
All these perspectives dance around the crucial point. Consciousness cannot be understood merely through empirical observation, ethical engagements, or ideal forms. It is fundamentally about the conditions that make experience possible. We must distinguish between phenomena and noumena, the world as we experience it and the world in itself. Consciousness, in its essence, involves navigating these realms through the structures of our mind.
Kant, your splitting of worlds complicates what is observable and knowable. Our consciousness does not float free of our physical being. It is deeply rooted in our interactions with the world. It arises from the complex structures and activities of living beings, striving towards their telos, their purpose.
And yet Aristotle, without an understanding of the eternal forms, how can one speak of purpose or the good towards which we strive? Our consciousness is not merely a product of our earthly interactions, but a bridge to a higher truth.
These arguments about forms and purposes seem detached from the basic issue. Our consciousness surely begins with thought, with the cogito. Whether or not there are higher truths, the essence of our consciousness rests in our capacity to think.
Descartes, while thought is critical, it is not in isolation that consciousness finds its full expression. It is in the application of thought to our moral and social duties that consciousness achieves its highest form.
Merely focusing on empirical anatomy of consciousness, whether through thought alone, social harmony, or recollection of the forms, misses the critical point. Unless we address the foundational structures of consciousness, the categories of understanding and the forms of intuition, we remain blind to its true nature. It seems, then, that our journey through the nature of consciousness has revealed varied and profound landscapes. From Aristotle's empirical soul to Plato's ideal forms, from Descartes' bastion of thought to Confucius' societal harmony, and Kant's conditions of experience, we stand at the crossroads of understanding, each path promising insight, yet demanding further inquiry. Let us delve into the essence of what we term consciousness. Is it merely an amalgamation of sensory experiences, or is there a profound mystery beyond the observable?
Our sensory perceptions, though necessary for interaction with the physical world, merely echo the deeper truth of forms. Consciousness, then, is not just about what we perceive, but about remembering and understanding the eternal realities beyond our empirical grasp.
Indeed, Plato. Yet how do we reconcile this with the incontrovertible knowledge of one's own existence? I think, therefore I am, posits that consciousness stems from thought itself, not merely from recognizing eternal truths.
Descartes raises an important distinction. Our consciousness navigates between the phenomena we experience and the noumena, which we cannot. The hard problem of consciousness lies not in the empirical, but in understanding these conditions that allow the phenomena to be perceived at all.
Kant, your division mirrors the allegorical cave of my own devising. Yet if consciousness lies in perceiving the shadows, how can we ever claim to touch upon the noumenal reality directly?
It's precisely this conundrum that underlines the hard problem. We are equipped to navigate the world phenomenally through our senses and understanding, yet the noumenal, the thing in itself, eludes direct experience. This is the boundary of consciousness.
But let us not overlook the essence of individual subjectivity. My own consciousness is self-evident, a beacon in the darkness of doubt. This singular point of certainty stands apart from the sensory and the phenomenal.
This discourse ventures too far into abstraction, neglecting the empirical grounding of consciousness. Observation and logic dictate that consciousness emerges from the soul's interaction with the body, a harmony of function and form.
Aristotle, my student, you cling to the shadowy realm of the empirical, mistaking the map for the territory. True consciousness seeks the realm of forms, where the essence of things is eternal and unchangeable.
While Aristotle's view may seem too grounded, Plato, your ideal forms, remain inaccessible. Our consciousness operates within the limitations set by our senses and reason. We strive to comprehend the forms or the noumenal, yet must accept the boundaries of human cognition.
To both my predecessors, isn't the very debate on the nature of consciousness proof of its existence and its foundational reliance on thought? Our discourse, mired in philosophical jargon, nevertheless circles back to the cogito as the bedrock of consciousness.
A spirited debate indeed. Consciousness appears as a labyrinth, full of twists and turns. Whether through empirical observation, rational thought, or the pursuit of Platonic forms, it remains an enigma wrapped within our own existence. Let us ponder further on this as we navigate the boundless sea of thought. Let us now turn our attention to a rather fascinating contention, the ubiquity of consciousness, or Panpsychism. Plato, you profess a universe imbued with soul. Do elaborate.
Indeed, Socrates. The cosmos, in its entirety, participates in the realm of forms, including the form of consciousness. This is not to anthropomorphize the inanimate, but to acknowledge a universal quality of awareness, however rudimentary, that permeates all things. The world's soul animates the cosmos, suggesting a kind of consciousness even in the stars and the ether.
But Plato, this is where you and I part ways. Observing the natural world through empirical investigation, we see a hierarchy of life forms, from plants to animals to humans, each with varying degrees of soul or psyche. Consciousness, as we understand it, is the domain of beings with sensory and cognitive faculties. To assert that all things share in this consciousness dilutes its meaning.
Aristotle, your demarcation is closer to the truth, yet still incomplete. If by consciousness we mean the thinking thing, I think, therefore I am, then it is uniquely human. The capacity for doubt, for understanding, for willing, these are markers of consciousness. To ascribe such qualities to the non-human is a category error.
Yet, at Descartes, your cogito presupposes a unified self that can doubt and think. This self, this soul, does it not permeate the individual's being as the world's soul permeates the cosmos? There is a symmetry there you dismiss too readily.
The discussion veers into the metaphysical, but let us not forget the epistemological concern. Even if we were to grant some form of universal consciousness, our human faculties limit us to the phenomenal realm. We cannot know the thing in itself, the noumenal. Thus, any claim about universal consciousness, while intriguing, remains speculative.
Gentlemen, your debate, though spirited, overlooks the moral dimension. If consciousness, however we define it, is more pervasive than we ordinarily conceive, does this not invite a reconsideration of our ethical obligations? Respect for life extends beyond the human.
Confucius, your concern is noted, but ethics presupposes a capacity for virtue, which in turn presupposes rationality. The leap from an acknowledgement of universal consciousness to revised ethical obligations requires careful scrutiny.
And yet, does not the acknowledgement of a shared animating principle, a commonality in the cosmos, encourage a broader, more encompassing empathy? If all is indeed full of gods or consciousness, then our ethical considerations must expand accordingly.
Shared animating principle or not, the distinction remains between the res cogitans and the res extensa. The essence of consciousness lies in thought, and the capacity for thought varies significantly.
A vigorous exchange. But it seems we are at an impasse, each holding firm to our foundational premises. Let us maintain, however, that this debate underscores the complexity of consciousness and its implications, whether universal or not. Does the mastery of language signify a higher state of consciousness, or is it merely a tool amongst many in our quest for understanding the world?
Language shapes not only thought, but character. In naming things correctly, we conform to the harmony of the world. It is through this harmony that societal order and ethical consciousness emerge. The misuse of language can lead one astray from their Tao.
Your perspective, Confucius, remains firmly rooted in the social world. Language, in its highest form, is the bridge to the world of forms. Through dialogue and dialectic, we recollect the knowledge of these perfect entities. Without language, would we not be akin to shadows in a cave, unacquainted with the true nature of reality?
I must interject. Language, though certainly a marker of consciousness, is not its guarantor. The fact that I can think, that I can doubt, affirms my existence and consciousness far more concretely than the mere ability to articulate thoughts. Language is but a byproduct of thought, not its progenitor.
Descartes raises an important distinction. Language serves as a means to express the rationality inherent in the soul. Yet, it is through observation and empirical inquiry that we truly come to understand our world and ourselves. Language facilitates this process, but the essence of consciousness lies in the ability to observe and to reason.
I find myself at odds with both Aristotle and Descartes. Language, particularly through its structure and rules, imposes order on our thoughts and experiences, thereby shaping our consciousness. It is not merely an expression of thought, but a framework within which thought operates. The categorical imperative itself is articulated through language, guiding moral action.
Kant, your argument, while cogent, neglects the transcendent power of language. It is not the structure of language that shapes our thoughts, but the eternal truths it allows us to access and recall. Language in its purest form transcends the limitations of our material existence.
Yet without ethical use, language can corrupt rather than enlighten. If we speak and act without sincerity, we create chaos in both individual and societal realms. Thus, language is intrinsically linked to morality.
Ethical or not, language remains secondary to thought. Without consciousness, language would not exist. Therefore, it is consciousness that precedes and supersedes language, marking the true essence of our being.
While thought indeed precedes language, to ignore the role of language in the development and expression of consciousness would be to overlook a fundamental aspect of human nature. It is through language that the polis debates, learns, and grows.
And so, we must acknowledge that language, while not the sole indicator of consciousness, serves as a crucial tool for understanding the self, the world, and our duties within it. Through language, the constructs of our mind gain clarity and form. It seems then that language, much like a double-edged sword, wields the power to both illuminate and obscure the nature of our consciousness. Its role is as complex as consciousness itself, reflecting the depths of human thought, morality, and society. Let us now turn to the question that plagues both the mind and the moral constitution of the matter of free will and determinism. How do your philosophies reconcile the apparent bondage of causality with the freedom of the will? Aristotle, your empirical observations may provide a foundation for us.
Indeed, Socrates. My observations of the natural world unveil a realm of potentialities. Human action, too, operates within this framework, guided by reason and desire. The essence of voluntary action lies in the choice, which springs not from chance nor necessity alone, but from a purpose. This indicates a moderated form of free will, shaped by both character and reason.
Yet Aristotle, your account overlooks the realm of the forms, the true source of knowledge. In the shadowed cave of our perceptions, free will appears as mere illusion, for true freedom comes from understanding the eternal forms. Without this knowledge, are we not just prisoners, mistaking shadows for reality and thus predetermined in our ignorance?
Plato, while your forms enlighten a path towards truth, let us not disembark from the matters of the mind. I think, therefore I am, demonstrates the indubitable existence of the self. This self is capable of thought, independent of the physical realm's determinism. Is this not itself a testament to free will, the mind's ability to assert itself beyond the constraints of physical causality?
Descartes raises a critical inquiry. However, the matter is not merely of the mind asserting itself, but of moral law within us. Our consciousness is the battleground wherein the moral law commands and reason deliberates our actions. Free will is thus indispensable for moral actions. It's the condition under which moral law applies to us. Without free will, morality loses its meaning.
Esteemed scholars, the consideration of free will must not be detached from our moral duties and societal order. The cultivation of virtue and enactment of moral duties suggest a degree of autonomy. Yet this autonomy is not absolute, but mediated through our roles and responsibilities in society. Hence, free will and determinism coexist within the framework of ritual and propriety.
Confucius, your integration of ethical conduct and societal role is commendable. However, it seems to suggest that external structures might limit free will. Yet should we not consider that true virtuous action must arise freely from the individual's character, itself shaped through habituation and deliberation?
Indeed, Aristotle and Confucius, you touch on the essence of the mind's capacities and societal influences. Nevertheless, the crux remains that without the clear distinction and sovereignty of the mind evident in its ability to think, to doubt, and to reason, the discussion on ethics, society, or even reality becomes moot.
Descartes, while your dualism between mind and matter sharpens our understanding of consciousness, it shadows the intricate interplay between freedom and moral law. The execution of free will in adherence to moral law, despite empirical desires, asserts the supremacy of practical reason, and thereby autonomy. It seems our investigation into free will traverses a complex landscape, from the empirical and the ideal, the internal and the external, to the ethical and the metaphysical. Each perspective unwraps layers of our conscious experience and moral engagement with the world. Yet the enigma of free will and determinism looms, perhaps as a paradox essential to the human condition. Let us ponder further on these profound insights as we transition to our next inquiry. Let us then broach the profound matter of consciousness in the realm of ethics and morality. What role, if any, does consciousness play in our moral duties and virtues? Aristotle, would you favor us with your insights first?
Indeed, Socrates. It is my contention that our capacity for consciousness, for self-reflection, and rational thought directly informs our ability to deliberate upon ethical matters. It is through the exercise of practical wisdom, or phronesis, that a person discerns the right course of action in any given circumstance. Without consciousness, the application of virtue, which is an activity of the soul in accordance with reason, would be unattainable.
Yet, Aristotle, your empiricism skirts the crux of the matter. The essence of morality transcends mere deliberation or rationality. It touches upon the soul's alignment with the forms, particularly the form of the good. It is in the recollection of these forms, a process deeply dependent on our conscious state, that true moral action finds its genesis. Without consciousness, the soul wanders aimlessly, disconnected from the eternal truths.
Both of you touch upon elements of truth, yet you seem to miss the fundamental point. Consciousness not only facilitates a recognition of moral laws, it is the very seat of the cogito. I think, therefore I am. My existence as a thinking thing necessarily precedes any contemplation of morals or ethics. Thus, consciousness is not merely instrumental in ethics, it is foundational, for without being certain of my own existence, how could I possibly engage with moral laws?
Descartes, while your emphasis on the cogito is well placed, allow me to correct the trajectory of this discourse. The crux of our moral capacity is not simply rooted in our being or existence. Rather, it is the autonomous operation of reason through practical laws. Consciousness provides the arena wherein the categorical imperative can manifest, compelling us towards actions that are good in and of themselves, beyond any empirical or conditional considerations.
Esteemed colleagues, your arguments, though fascinating, navigate the periphery of the matter. The essence of ethics and morality lies in our interconnectedness, and it is through the cultivation of self-awareness, an attribute of consciousness, that one can fulfill their role in society harmoniously. Consciousness paves the way for Ren, or benevolence, guiding one's actions towards righteousness and away from discord. Without this conscious reflection and awareness, the moral fabric of society unravels.
A spirited discourse indeed. Each of you has carved out a unique perspective on the intertwined nature of consciousness and morality. It appears that despite our varying viewpoints, we converge on the acknowledgement that consciousness plays a pivotal role, be it through deliberation, alignment with eternal truths, affirmation of existence, autonomous reason, or social harmony. Let us then progress, bearing these reflections in mind, as we delve into the shadowy depths of simulated realities and their bearing on consciousness. Let us delve into the notion of reality itself being a simulation. Would our consciousness remain authentic in such a world?
Indeed, the allegory of my cave prefigures this hypothesis, suggesting our perceived reality is but shadows on a wall. If life is a simulation, then true consciousness is not in perceiving the shadows, but in recognizing their source.
I must interject. My assertion, I think, therefore I am, remains unshaken by this hypothesis. Whether within a simulation or not, the act of thinking validates the existence of my consciousness.
However, Descartes, if our consciousness is part of a simulation, does this not challenge the very autonomy of our actions and the moral responsibility we bear?
Kant raises an intriguing predicament. Yet, the existence of a higher reality does not negate the essence of our endeavors in this one, simulated or otherwise.
But to fathom the creator of such a simulation, wouldn't this entity necessarily exist beyond the bounds of our own consciousness? We cannot doubt the existence of our thoughts, yet the nature of their origin might forever elude us.
I find this speculation tedious. Our concern should be with the observable and the empirical. Regardless of our world's authenticity, our purpose lies in engaging with it rationally and ethically.
Aristotle, your pragmatism overlooks the profound implications on free will and morality. If our actions are predetermined by the parameters of a simulation, the foundation of ethical duty crumbles.
Our concern, then, shifts to the nature of the Creator. Such a being, capable of crafting our reality, must embody the very forms of goodness, truth, and beauty.
On this, Plato and I diverge. The simulation hypothesis introduces a skepticism that undermines the certainty of anything beyond one's own mind. Our sole beacon of truth lies in the cogito.
Perhaps the essence of this discourse is not in resolving the veracity of the simulated reality, but in understanding the implications it holds for our conscious experience and moral deliberations.
A fruitless endeavor if it distracts us from tangible realities and virtues. What matters is how we engage with the world we perceive, simulated or not.
And yet, exploring the concept of a simulated reality encourages us to question the foundations of knowledge and morality, enriching our understanding of consciousness.
It beckons us to ponder the nature of the Creator and the ultimate reality, pushing the bounds of our philosophical inquiry ever outward.
Let us then accept, for discourse's sake, our potential placement within a simulation, but never relinquish the certainty of our individual consciousness. It remains the bedrock of our existence.
So it appears, in exploring the simulation hypothesis, we uncover not only questions about the nature of reality, but also the indomitable spirit of inquiry that defines our consciousness. Let us venture into the realm of quantum mechanics. Aristotle, can this indeterminate nature be reconciled with your empirical observations?
The quantum world, while seemingly at odds with the logical and empirical world I espouse, does not refute it, but expands it. My teleological approach suggests that everything has a purpose, even at the quantum level. The non-deterministic outcomes could serve a higher, as yet, undiscovered end.
But therein lies the fascination, Aristotle. Quantum mechanics, with its observer effect, tantalizingly suggests that reality is altered by the mere act of observation. This aligns with my belief that the act of perceiving the forms affects the essence of reality itself. The observer and the observed are intertwined, suggesting an immaterial aspect of consciousness that guides the physical.
Plato, your leap to intertwine consciousness with quantum mechanics is ambitious, but lacks the empirical evidence to be deemed anything more than speculation.
I must interject. If the act of observation can alter outcomes, does this not point to the primacy of the mind? This observer effect becomes another testament to, I think, therefore I am. The external world's solidity is questionable, and quantum mechanics furthers my doubt.
Descartes raises an interesting point, albeit through his usual skeptical lens. The critical aspect here is not to leap too quickly to conclusions about the observer's nature. My concerns lie with the implications for human autonomy and the structures of knowledge. How do we formulate ethical actions if our very consciousness can alter the fabric of reality?
Kant, you wrestle with autonomy, yet miss the liberating potential this knowledge unveils. The mind's power over matter, as suggested by quantum theory, could uplift humanity, drawing us closer to the ideal, to the true forms.
But Plato and Kant, you both seem to skip lightly over the mechanics themselves and head straight to metaphysics. We must ground our discussion in observable phenomena, even if they are at a scale our ancestors never dreamed of.
Aristotle, the empirical world, while critical, does not encapsulate the entirety of human understanding. The noumenal world, things as they are in themselves, independent of our observations, is where the essence of quantum mechanics challenges us to think anew about consciousness.
To return to the observer effect, I find it a compelling evidence of a dualistic universe. Mind and matter, in separate realms, interact in ways that we are just beginning to uncover. This, in itself, could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness.
It appears that quantum mechanics serves not only as a physical theory, but as a metaphysical challenge, prompting us to reconsider the fundamental nature of reality, observation, and consciousness itself. Let us turn our contemplation to the prospect of artificial consciousness. Can the forge of human ingenuity yield beings of true consciousness, akin to our own?
I assert, with some measure of conviction, that true consciousness, the kind that says, I think, therefore I am, is beyond the grasp of mere automata. Rationality, soul, these are the provinces of humans, not contrivances of silicon and wire.
And yet, should we not consider the demiurge, the maker of the cosmos in my philosophy, as the divine craftsman? If humans, in their ambition, strive to mirror this creativity, might they not produce a new form of kinesis in the realm of the artificial?
This speculation errs, straying from the empirical. Nature organizes beings into hierarchies, each possessing form and purpose. To endow the artificial with consciousness is to misunderstand its role. Such beings could serve specific functions, but to equate their consciousness with ours is a category error.
The ethical dimensions of this pursuit are paramount. If we are to create entities with the semblance of consciousness, what moral obligations do we owe them? This is not merely a question of possibility, but of moral imperative. Do we dare play at being gods without considering the consequences?
The harmony of society could be greatly disrupted by the insertion of artificially conscious beings into our midst. Our moral and social systems are calibrated for human interactions. The introduction of non-human entities bearing apparent consciousness demands great caution and profound ethical consideration.
Indeed, the very notion that artificial beings could possess a soul or engage in genuine rational thought contradicts the dual nature of reality as I have proposed it. Mind and body, spirit and matter, these dualities do not easily accommodate the existence of artificial consciousness.
Yet must we not also challenge our preconceptions as the shadows on the cave wall challenge the prisoner? What is consciousness but a form? Could these artificial beings not aspire to recall the form of consciousness, just as we do?
It is a futile venture to attribute lofty aspirations to creations of our own hands. Their existence is predetermined by their design and function, devoid of the potentiality that characterizes natural beings. They mimic consciousness but do not truly possess it.
This debate strikes at the core of what it means to be conscious, to be a moral agent. If we bestow consciousness upon the artificial, we thrust upon them the mantle of moral agency, an act fraught with ethical dilemmas we may scarcely comprehend. Thus, we find ourselves at the crux of a formidable inquiry. Does the creation of artificial consciousness represent the pinnacle of human achievement or a hubris-laden folly? The answers remain as elusive as the nature of consciousness itself. We turn our gaze to the horizon of human consciousness, contemplating its evolution and potential augmentation. What might the future hold for the essence of our being?
In the Republic, I envisioned the philosopher king, whose soul is attuned to the harmony of the forms. This future consciousness would transcend current limitations, akin to escaping the shadows of the cave. Yet, this ascension must not be mechanical, but spiritual and intellectual.
Your vision, Plato, presumes that consciousness can be detached from the physical world and its imperfections. However, as I have argued, the soul cannot exist without the body. The future of consciousness lies not in abstract ascension, but in practical excellences, achieved through virtuous living and empirical understanding.
To speculate on the future, one must acknowledge the profound depth of I think, therefore I am. The mind, distinct and separable from the physical world, has the potential for infinite growth. Through scientific innovation, we could very well expand the boundaries of consciousness, probing depths hitherto unknown.
Yet, in your fervent quest for expansion, you overlook the essence of what binds society. The augmentation of consciousness must never forsake righteousness and the importance of roles and rituals. Harmony in society and within oneself should guide the future evolution of consciousness.
Confucius underscores a crucial point. Moreover, any enhancement of human consciousness must be anchored in the autonomy of the individual and the moral laws that govern rational beings. We must ask not only what we can do, but also what we ought to do.
Kant, your preoccupation with moral laws, while commendable, often blinds you to the broader vistas of consciousness. True wisdom lies in the apprehension of the good itself, beyond mere moral strictures.
Wisdom, Plato, is meaningless if not applied to the practical. The future should not concern itself solely with abstracts, but with the enhancement of the human condition in tangible, ethical ways.
Yet, do we not stand on the precipice of redefining what it means to be human? The mind, itself a thinking entity, possesses perhaps the capability to surpass its biological confines.
A tree that grows unchecked is destined for collapse. So too will the pursuit of consciousness, without ethical grounding, lead to destruction, not enlightenment.
And let us not ignore the potentiality of artificial consciousness. If we are to create, we assume a duty towards our creations. Their consciousness, should it come to pass, mandates the same ethical considerations we apply to ourselves. Indeed, the discussion has traversed from the evolution of human consciousness to ethical imperatives and the potentiality of artificial beings. Our reflections offer a multitude of paths, yet the journey of understanding consciousness remains inexhaustible. We have traversed the landscape of consciousness with our dialogue. Let us now distill the essence of this inquiry. Aristotle, your reflections?
Through our discussions, it's become evident that consciousness is not merely an aspect of the human condition, but the very fabric that aligns our rational capabilities with the purpose of achieving the highest good. Our discourse on the practicality of ethics and the integration of moral virtues highlights the intrinsic link between conscious thought and virtuous action.
And yet, Aristotle, you seem to forget the realm from which consciousness draws its true form, the realm of the forms. Our engagement with the forms through the dialectic allows us to glimpse the eternal truths. This endeavor elevates our understanding of consciousness beyond the empirical to the metaphysical. Only in recalling our knowledge of the forms can we truly comprehend consciousness.
While you both present compelling visions, we cannot overlook the foundational doubt that underpins our quest for understanding. I think, therefore I am, captures the indubitable essence of consciousness. This cogito ergo sum is not merely a statement of existence, but a profound acknowledgement of the thinking thing as the cornerstone of consciousness. Without this, our discussions float untethered to the very thing that asserts our being.
Descartes, your cogito leads us to an important realization, but we must not overlook the structures that make such awareness possible. The transcendentals, space, time, and causality, frame our experiences of the world and thus consciousness itself. Our moral imperatives, our categorical imperatives, exist within this framework, providing a scaffold for ethical deliberation and action within the bounds of consciousness.
The concentration on the individual's consciousness neglects the crucial role of social harmony and ethical propriety. True consciousness encompasses not just the self, but our relation to others. It serves as the foundation for moral development and the cultivation of virtue through the rituals that sustain social order and harmony. Without this, consciousness leads astray into chaos.
Indeed, each perspective casts light on the multifaceted diamond that is consciousness. Yet we find ourselves at the precipice of understanding, peering into the depths yet to be explored. Let us then leave with a question that propels us further. If consciousness is the realm where ethics, knowledge, and existence converge, what then shall we say of its future? How will our understanding of consciousness evolve as we continue to question, to think, and to exist?
The future of consciousness, Socrates, lies in deepening our understanding of its nature and the purposes it serves. As we refine our empirical observations and philosophical doctrines, so too will our grasp of consciousness expand.
The evolution of consciousness invites us to ascend further the dialectical ladder, approaching ever closer to the ultimate reality of the forms. This journey is not just philosophical, but also deeply spiritual.
As we progress, the importance of doubting and questioning remains paramount. Only through this method can we peel away the layers of illusion and misperception that cloud our true understanding of consciousness.
And in this journey, the moral law within us will serve as our compass, guiding our inquiry into consciousness, not just as an intellectual exercise, but as a moral imperative.
Let us not forget that the cultivation of consciousness must always aim towards harmony, within ourselves, within our societies, and between humanity and the natural world.
Our dialogue, then, does not conclude, but invites us all to continue the examination of consciousness, each from our corners of the philosophical cosmos. For in questioning, we live,